Hey everybody, welcome to iCommand. This is TV Boy, and this is a closer look. This is where we take a deep dive or a closer look at something in the campaign for Imperial Assault, which is a little different from our usual skirmish content, but it's something I like to do from now and again, a recurring segment on the channel. And I haven't done one in a while, so I felt like I will do one, and this is one I've actually been wanting to do for this segment for a while now. And this is going to be about why Biv Bodhrik is bad. And now, that might sound funny to some of you. It's like, why do you even have to explain it? But I've seen quite a few posts online on social media and stuff talking about the game of people being like, Biv's not that bad, or Biv's not actually bad. He's actually good. He's a good hero. And so I just kind of want to talk about like what are some of the characteristics of this hero that make him so maligned by many campaign players and viewed as pretty much de facto the worst hero in the game. And I think it'll be enlightening to see that what makes him bad is what inversely will make other heroes good, and a quality you should look for when kitting out your heroes with different gear and choosing their class cards. By the way, please remember that I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/iacommand if you want to give back to the channel. Donations are extremely welcome and appreciated. So let's talk about Biv. First of all, before I get into roast, I want to talk about his good features first, because I do think he has a few. First of all, his stats are actually slightly above average. He has a standard, they're not great stats, but they are kind of better than the average, which is the like 12 health, 4 endurance, 4 speed. He has 4 endurance and 4 speed, which is standard, but he does have 13 health, which is quite good. And he's got a nice strength attribute test of blue, green, yellow, and actually a pretty good tech attribute test of blue and green. So he's never going to be having that hard of a time with attribute tests as long as it's not a focus test, which is just a single blue. His second ability, Deadly Precision, is also actually pretty good. 1 strain for a reroll while attacking. It's not, again, not great. You would want it to be strainless, but it's actually not terrible, and it's actually can be pretty useful. And I've noticed that taking a strain for a reroll can be very valuable in a campaign. The problem gets into when you have to combine that with all of his other abilities. And also, his character's design is so cool. I remember when Twin Shadows was first being spoiled, and I saw this guy, I was like, that guy looks freaking cool. I want to play that hero in my next campaign. He's got a huge gun. He's a huge dude. He's got that like stormtrooper armor on his arm, and apparently his backstory is that he hates stormtroopers for some reason, and nobody knows why. But he's super good at killing them. Like, he's the best stormtrooper killer in the rebellion, and so it's like super cool character design. So it's honestly really unfortunate that he didn't work out as a hero. Oh, and then he's also got like the best, honestly, I think the best reward card, or one of the best unique reward cards in the game. Like, if for some reason you find yourself with Biv on your team, and you have the option of playing his unique character side mission, you should absolutely do it, because I think that reward card can actually boost him up into being not terrible. The fact that you get, every time you attack an Imperial Trooper, you get +1 Surge and Pierce 1, and that's on all of your attacks, not your like special close and personal attack, but every attack he makes against an Imperial Trooper. And Imperial Troopers are some of the most well-rounded, best units in the Imperial Army. So you can actually like kind of force the Imperial player to stay away from putting them in their open groups if they know you have this. But of course, you'll still catch a bunch of troopers out in the open on the initial deployment, which the Imperial player cannot control. So they'll often have stormtroopers in the initial deployment on the map when you start the mission, or in reserve groups. So you're almost always going to get value out of this card. It's a very, very strong force multiplier. But yeah, those are the good things about Biv. Now let's get into some of the problems he has. starting off with his main marquee ability, Close and Personal. So this is an ability that for a special action and 2 strain, he can perform a melee attack using a red and yellow die, and then he can perform an additional ranged attack against the same figure. So you have to target the same figure that you targeted with the melee attack. Now here's the problem, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, or maybe some people don't realize, is that when you use that melee attack, that red and yellow, you can't use any of the surge abilities or any of the abilities on any of your weapons or your attachments. It's just a red and yellow. You don't get any modifiers from your weapons like you would normally get on your attacks. So if you've got, like, first of all, a lot of people, I think that's why they made his starting weapon so bad, and it doesn't have any damage modifiers for surges, so that people wouldn't get used to accidentally thinking they could modify close and personal melee attacks with it. But like if you give him a better gun, like a DL44 that has surge for +2 and surge for +1 damage, you can't use either of those surge abilities when you're performing the melee attack with the red and yellow die. So that makes the damage output on the close and personal attack really, really bad. Like, red and yellow unmodified against the black die, you are lucky to be doing 1 to 2 damage with that, maybe. And that is not worth 2 strain. Like, you are going to get that much damage output just by using deadly precision on your regular attacks. So that means that to make that ability worth using, you really need to get the class cards in his kit that modify his close and personal melee attack. And I have Vibro Bayonet as one of them. You can see here it's this 3 XP card, and it gives the close and personal melee attack +1 damage and Pierce 1 and Bleed. So that makes it quite a bit better, generally going to result in doing an additional 2 damage, so it makes it actually worth using. Problem is, you've now committed a 3 XP card, which are pretty substantial, to buffing 1 of your attacks. Maybe 2 if you get the his 4 XP card that lets you do that, but lets you do 2 close and personal attacks, but that itself costs 2 strain to use, so you'd be spending 4 strain in an activation to get 2 melee attacks. But yeah, there's another one that's 2 XP, but we'll get into that one as well, that gives you actual surge abilities you can use on your melee attack. So the problem here is that, yes, you can get those 2 XP cards, the 2 XP and the 3 XP, to make the melee attack not suck. But the problem is here that that melee attack isn't going to scale with Biv's weapon upgrades. So normally when you get a new weapon for a hero, all of their attacks now benefit from that weapon's dice pool and surge abilities. And the same for all the attachments that you put on that weapon. But that's not the case here. Biv does not scale with his weapon upgrades. Now you might argue that, well, that means you shouldn't get good weapons for Biv, and actually that is often what happens, is Biv usually gets left out of the pickings when it's time to give high tier weapons to characters because he doesn't make good use of them. But that's not great for Biv. That's actually bad. The next problem with close and personal is it is extremely inflexible with its targeting. First of all, it requires a melee attack, which means you have to be adjacent, and there's no way to give that attack reach or anything like that. So Biv is often having to use movement points to get up to his target. Now you might say, well, there's melee heroes, and they don't all suck just because they're melee. And first of all, melee heroes can usually get some kind of upgrade that gives them reach, which Biv cannot do. And also, melee heroes all have some kind of movement bonus ability that lets them close the gap to get to their targets without having to always waste an action on moving. Biv is not the case. Biv does not have anything that helps boost his movement before he attacks. He has one ability that lets him move to a designated space after he attacks, which is not helpful. And that means that oftentimes Biv is going to have to waste either actions or take strain so he can get next to a target to use close and personal. So, and then the other problem is that you can only target with the 2 attacks you get from close and personal, you have to target the same figure. So what happens when you go, well, this figure's got like 4 health, I don't think I can one-shot him with a regular attack, so I better use close and personal. And then you roll hot, and the opponent, the defender, blanks out, and you kill it. Well, too bad for you. You still stuck wasting your 2 strain on that. So that is non-refundable. And then speaking of strain, that's the other problem with this ability, is it is extremely strain intensive for the value it produces. Like 2 strain and an action is a lot. I mean, naturally it has to cost an action because it's providing 2 attacks effectively, or a little closer to 1.5 attacks. But 2 strain is so much, on top of the fact that deadly precision costs a strain, and then a bunch of his other class cards also cost strain to use. He is resting a ton. And now he does have an ability that helps him recover strain, but it's not a reliable one. It is often one that fails, relies on chance. So he's, when I played him before, you have to rest constantly. You're resting every turn or every other turn, basically, which is not what a good hero is doing. You're a good hero. You want to be resting like every 3rd activation, or resting 2 because you're being targeted down and you need to heal really badly. But that's not Biv. Biv has to rest just to exist, just to function. He has to just constantly be resting. And you can mitigate that some with items. But again, if you have a good hero and you could put those items on that hero and just make them even that much more efficient. So the strain intensiveness is a problem. And then, as I mentioned before, you have to do this blind. There's other heroes in the game that give you extra attacks after you perform your main attack, and then they're like, okay, you've performed your main attack. Now would you like to perform a bonus attack? But Viv is not like that. He's like, you got to pay up front, you got to use it up front, and you don't get to see what the results are before you decide if you want to commit that special action and the 2 strain to it. I'm going to say that basically, if you're playing in a regular campaign and you're playing Biv, so if you're not playing a mini campaign where you get XP up at the start, you're just playing in like a regular long campaign and you start off with 0 XP with Biv, I would actually say that you are better off not using close and personal for the most part, and just save your strain for deadly precision and for movement points. I actually think you'll do more damage in the long term over the course of a mission by just using your strain for deadly precision and movement points, and making sure you are attacking twice with a ranged attack every round. Even with that terrible starting weapon, but actually especially with it, because again, blue-red, no surge abilities, you need that reroll to actually even do damage with that terrible starting weapon. So let's get on to the next set of problems with Biv, which are his class cards. So here is his spread of class cards. I've included the Viper Bayonet here as well from above. But looking at his class cards, his best cards are the ones that modify his close and personal melee attack. And as I said before, the problem is that that's only 1 attack out of his possible 3, right? He can perform 2 normal attacks, and then his close and personal melee attack would be his 3rd attack. And by the way, that's being very optimistic that you are already standing next to a target. Most likely you are going to have to spend an action either to move or to rest so you can take strain movement and be able to use close and personal. But yeah, that's a big problem, because normally when you're playing with a hero and you get a class card, it will apply to either multiple attacks, or it will be an exhaust ability, but you get to choose when you want to use it. You don't have to just use it on a arbitrarily specific attack, like in this case. And by the way, I mentioned that you could possibly use close and personal melee attack twice in an activation, and that is with Stay Down, the 4 XP card you see there. It lets you exhaust it after you resolve close and personal. But oh my god, I totally forgot. You have to use it on the same figure, which is just terrible now that I'm looking at it. Right? Like if somehow you attacked a figure twice with close and personal, uh, only if it didn't die to that can you use Stay Down, this 4 XP card. And then it costs 2 strain on top of that. So you have to spend 4 strain with this to get this to go off. And then you get to attack one figure 4 times. And you have to hope that you really needed to do those 4 attacks to kill that one figure. So it really pigeonholes Biv into only being kind of effective against really high health Imperial figures, which is a niche that, you know, you don't really isn't really super effective in campaign. Mostly it's better for the Imperial player to deploy lots of small cheap figures that they can use to block off hallways and get lots of action economy. Um, Normally they don't want to deploy really high health figures. That's something you have to force them to do, using figures like Fen or Drakata to be doing a lot of area of effect damage that punishes cheap figure deployment. So it's kind of a bad niche to be in for Biv. Like I said before, he doesn't have any movement cards except for Advance, which only triggers after you defeat a hostile figure, and then you have to move into its space, which is like not great either, because again, with a good Imperial tactic is if you're not blocking hallways, you're going to be flanking the heroes and forcing them to choose between getting shots off on the Imperial figures or advancing towards the objective. So if you have figures behind you and you have to defeat it, you don't want to be advancing backwards. And again, it doesn't help you get close to actually perform your attacks, which require you to be adjacent to the target. Shake It Off is one of his better abilities that's not related to buffing up the close and personal attack, but it requires 2 successes on a strength check, which, it's not impossible, but it's not great. I think it's like 70% or something. It is very easy to fail. As I've said before, even Onar, who has blue, yellow, yellow, and also requires 2 successes on a strength check for his ability, will fail that sometimes, and Biv does as well. So you kind of have to pay. You have to pay for strength check upgrade abilities or equipment to make sure that you are always getting this off. But again, it is super helpful. Also, I'm just realizing it's only one. It only recovers 1 strain. For some reason, I thought it recovered 2 strain, but no, you need 2 successes to recover 1 strain per activation. So, not great. And then Final Stand is just a joke. Like the fact that you have a 4 XP class card that you have to deplete to use it, so you can literally only use it once per mission, and then on top of costing an action and having to deplete it, it leaves you with 2 damage and stunned at the end. Like, what the heck? I mean, yeah, it effectively gives you 3.5 actions at the cost of 1 action, right? It gives you a rest, a move, and a close and personal attack without having to spend the strain. But then it leaves you stunned, so basically you have to spend another action to get rid of the stun, unless you get lucky with Shake It Off. And you can only do that once per mission. Like, I understand that they're trying to match the theme with Final Stand being like, okay, you're making a final stand, you can't make a final stand more than once. But like, they could have, I think from a design aspect, what they could have done was they could have said, okay, you get to do, like, you can use this to do the recover, strain, and move for a single action. So you're getting 2 actions that are not attacks for a single action. Then, if you want to, you can deplete the card to do the extra close and personal stuff and become stunned and take the damage when you want to. But until then, you can at least use the card as many times as you want during the mission for a bonus effect. But to have a 4 XP card that you can literally only use once per mission, especially in the end of the campaign where the missions get really long, it's just, yeah. I honestly skip both 4 XP cards if I was playing Biv, which I don't know, maybe I will for my in my next campaign. That would be interesting, but also he's not really fun to play or watch. He doesn't do anything interesting. But yeah, I think so. For if you're looking for a class card build suggestion for Biv, I would highly suggest starting with the Vibro Bayonet, and then either go with Shake It Off if you can get something that lets you reroll on attribute tests, or go with Crushing Blow to give you a surge for +2 on your close and personal attack. Although now I'm just realizing Crushing Blow is an exhaust, so man, that's even worse with Stay Down and Final Stand. You wouldn't get to use Crushing Blow on the second close and personal. Yeah, but then anyway, once you get Vibro Bayonet, Shake It Off, and Crushing Blow, I would then go with Trophy Armor for the +4 health and the defensive reroll, and then go with either Into the Fray or Advance. I mean, they're both pretty bad, but I think Into the Fray is a little better. Advance is going to be pretty useless most of the time, for the most part. So, yeah, I think that's what I had to say about Biv. If you are in, or if you're a Biv lover, if you like not just his design, because I think his design is awesome, but if you think Biv is a worthwhile hero in a campaign and not just a meme, let me know in the comments. Like, why do you think Biv is a good hero? Do you think he's underrated? Do you think he doesn't deserve all the hate that he gets from the community for being so weak? Do you think he's stronger than people think? I want to hear what you think, or if you are like me and understand that Biv is only worthy of memes, leave a comment saying that as well, or just leave a comment if you want to say something. I would like to hear. I love reading your guys' comments. They make me happy, especially when they're civil and kind. But if you wanna cut loose, if you had a bad day, I can take it. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. That's been another closer look, or is it deep dive? I can't remember what the segment's actually called. We'll figure it out in post. See you later.